Alright, let's talk about the pink-haired teleporting mutant who uses daggers. Nope, not that one, the other one. Hi, I'm Nando, and in this series, I take a Marvel Comics character, break down their background, their powers, their personality, give you some reading recommendations. And I'm talking about this character right now specifically because they're just about to be introduced into Marvel Snap. And this week we're talking about Clarice Ferguson, aka Blink. So I know I said that there was another character that's like this. I just want to point out, because we already did a Pixie episode, she's a little bit like Pixie. I've always had a problem because I'd never, when I was like younger, before I'd read books with either of these characters, but I had seen them, I saw this little pink woman doing something with a dagger and teleporting people, and I just assumed that was one character. Turns out there's two of them. So they're completely different, although like I said, similar in that way. But Blink's interesting because, first of all, she's a character who, while she exists in the 616 like mainline Marvel Comics universe, nobody cares about that version of Blink. To be fair, her first appearance was in Uncanny X-Men 317, written by Scott Liddell, with art by Joe Madureira, Dan Green, Steve Buccolato, and Chris Iliopoulos. Basically, in this story, Blink is a mutant who has a superpower that she does not like because it is teleporting. It's blink waves. She can teleport things and people and stuff, but when she does it, it often destroys the thing that she's teleporting her. It's way more chaotic than something like Nightcrawler. But that is because it gives you more opportunity to do stuff, right? Like Blink can teleport lots of stuff, whereas like Nightcrawler can teleport a person he is touching. Pixie can use her teleportation spell to teleport someone, but again, somewhat limited. Magic can use a spell to create a portal that she can use for teleporting. Like Blink can teleport any person or thing pretty much as far as she wants. She can do it from a distance. She can do it offensively or defensively. Like she can teleport you out of the way of danger, or she could teleport somebody else into danger, or she could teleport them in half. Like she's got so much use for her powers. It's her main power. So she's really good at it. But when she's young, it doesn't work out, and she's very scared to use it. So she gets captured along with the rest of the kids from Generation X, another super team that famously contains everyone's favorite mutant, Monet over here, Monet St. Croix, among others. She saves them by teleporting them all away from the Phalanx and then disappears into the ether. No one knows what happened to her. We assume she's died. So I'm going to fast forward. I'm going to skip one big chunk of important Blink stuff, which we'll get to. Let's look at Selene. So Selene Gallo, evil mutant vampire who is super old, perhaps older than anybody else on planet Earth or something like that. One of the externals, the thing that I already told you to forget about in the Cannonball episode, but like super evil, member of the Hellfire Society. She tricks Blink into thinking that she was like left in this hell dimension or whatever. Everybody thinks she's dead, but it turned out she got trapped in a different dimension. She was like, guys, help me, and nobody was helping her. Selene comes over and says, you know why they didn't help you? Because they don't like you and they don't care about you. Here, come help me, kill all of them, and it'll be cool and sweet. And then she does. She joins up with Selene for a little bit, does a bunch of murders, and then they tell her that Selene lied to her, and she feels real bad about it. And they're like, don't worry, it's okay, you can join the X-Men. And she's like, I don't know about that, but I will, keep you guys this number. If anything comes up, I'll call. That is like pretty much everything she's done in the X-Men comics. Like she doesn't even, I don't even know if she had any big presence on Krakoa. I'm trying to remember. I think she must have been part of the teleportation team that existed in Sword, because Sword had a team of mutants who, like all the teleporters basically. And she is, like I said, she's the best one. I think that's fair. I think she's the best one. There's other villains that are good at teleporting. Vanisher can teleport. And there's other characters related to like Azazel, another one, which we'll talk about in the next video, can also teleport. But I would say Blink's gotta be maybe the best one. I don't know if this is like a contest that anyone's ever figured out. But okay, so it's like, why do we even care? Why is this character the season pass card? First of all, sometimes the season pass card is not the most important card in the history of like Marvel Comics. Zabu, for example. I'm not glad I didn't have to do one of these for Zabu, but like, I don't know, man. He's a big saber-toothed tiger. He's got the powers of a saber-toothed tiger, and he is a cat. So, eats stuff that cats eat. And probably like small animals too. But anyway, I didn't have to do that for him. The thing about Blink is the version on this card for Marvel Snap this season is not the version from 616. She's the version from the Age of Apocalypse timeline. Age of Apocalypse is a story where Apocalypse takes over. It's this evil alternate timeline. It has a lot of characters, a lot of designs people are pretty familiar with. The Wolverine design, I think, gets a lot of play where he's missing a hand. It's cool looking. The Sabretooth from the Age of Apocalypse universe is very important. We'll get to why. But around the same time she was introduced into the 616 universe, they also put Blink in the Age of Apocalypse storyline, but she got way more to do. So I had to replace my battery, and in the meantime, someone decided it was lap time. So we're just gonna go with it. So Blink comes from the Age of Apocalypse universe, in the universe where Apocalypse is taken over fully, just he is in charge. And it's an alternate universe, but probably the most well-known X-Men alternate universe, besides I guess like the Ultimate X-Men. And I'm not a huge fan of it, but it's okay. It's got some interesting things going for it. Like in their universe, Sabretooth was a good guy. And in that story, he found and raised Blink. The same way that Wolverine, Lone Wolves and Cubs, Jubilee or Shadowcat or any of the other young X-Kids. That's pretty much what happened with Sabretooth and Blink. So she hangs around in the Age of Apocalypse storyline for a little bit, but eventually the most important thing that will ever happen to her happens. She gets pulled into the Exiles stories. So this is where I met this character for the first time. It's probably where most people became familiar with this character, and it's easily the most significant thing she's ever done. And again, this is very important. The Blink from Exiles is the Blink from the Age of Apocalypse storyline. So what are the Exiles? Well, it's the theme of the season. It was a book created in the 2000s. The idea was a guy who at the time seemed like a strange little man, not that special though, not like a superhero, just some guy named the Time Broker, unstick 6 different characters from time, turn them into a team that would be used to fulfill some sort of mission. And usually these were missions where it would be like, oh, this universe is doing something wrong and you need to fix it. Their universe is the Fantastic Four is bad and you got to kill them. That's not one. But like something like that. They get this information from this man, the Time Broker, but specifically he gives one member of the team a wrist gauntlet called the Talus, which is kind of like a little just wrist communicator thingy, which gives you hints about who you're supposed to be fighting or what you're supposed to be doing. So it does this in riddles. You may be wondering, well, okay, but what's actually going on here? Who is the Time Broker? Why are they doing this? Why don't they just fix these things themselves? Why don't they tell the people what to fix? What to do to fix them? The answer is, it doesn't matter. That's the thing. The fun of the Exile series is how chaotic and stupid it is. Because there's points where, there are things that the Time Brokers are doing where you're like, that's a dumb thing. And then you do find out later, it's like, oh, that's why that happened, I see. But a lot of the other times it's like they just recruit whoever. It's one of the things that I feel like Marvel does this a lot, and a lot of books do this, where they'll create a team and you're like, why do they put these guys all on the team? And then by the end of the book, you're like, oh, I see what they were going for. This character knows this character and this and this. The Exiles, it really does seem like there's a dartboard with all the Marvel characters on it. And every time they need a new Exile, they close their eyes and throw a dart. That's how you ended up with Evil Hyperion. That's how you ended up with Sunfire, a Captain Marvel, a Magic. It's just whatever character shows up. And again, this is not something where it's like, oh, they got exactly the right person for every mission. It's like they just picked who was available and it turned out to sometimes work. But, a lot of them die. A lot of the time on a mission, the Exiles are killed and then just get replaced by another Exile. Now, I bet you're wondering, so these people get unstuck from time and they're given the Talus by the Time Broker and he goes, all right, fix time. Why don't they just not do that? Well, he'll usually throw in some sort of ultimatum where it's like, if you don't do what I said, I will make it so that you never existed in your universe, and that means everybody you know will die, or something like that. And that's not good. And if they do everything they're supposed to do and they don't die, the deal is they get to go back to their own universe, or sometimes it's not exactly that. But there is supposed to be an end game where it's like you just eventually you look at your Talus and you go, you know what? Oh, Nocturne, you get to go home. Isn't that great? And sometimes that happens, but a lot of the times they die. Like for instance, the original team of Exiles: Blink, Nocturne, a character we will get to later, Morph, the main version of Morph that everyone is familiar with from the comics but the Marvel Snap card and also kind of X-Men 97 is this version of Morph basically, with the white face, who's kind of like a Plastic Man kind of figure, very wacky shapeshifter. A version of Thunderbird, Mimic, who is different from Morph, even though I get those two, especially when I was reading this, I get those names confused a lot. But Mimic is another X-Men who has the powers of X-Men. and like can call on different powers. So it's kind of like Rogue. And then another character, Magnus, and this was in a different universe. Now all these guys are not from the 616 universe. They're all from some random universe where something was weird. In that universe, Magneto and Rogue had a kid, and that's who this kid is. So he's got a fusion of Rogue and Magneto superpowers. Spoiler alert, he dies in the first mission and just is dead, and we never see him again. And then the time broker's like, well, all right, well, we get a new guy. And then they just get a new guy. So it is very chaotic, kind of silly team. You also see a lot of different parts of the Marvel universe. This does kind of turn into What If a little bit, where they go into a universe where someone's in charge in a way that they usually aren't, so they have to figure out what's going on. And it's kind of fun seeing these different teams work together, because like I was saying, sometimes they have some things in common, right? You do eventually get the Age of Apocalypse Sabretooth hanging out with Age of Apocalypse Blink, so like that's like a reunion. But a lot of the times it's just 6 random characters together, and that can be a lot of fun. Blink is the de facto leader of the Exiles. It is not exclusively because she gets the Talus on her arm, but that's a big part of it. It seems like that just is the Talus machine just going like, oh yeah, she's in charge, and then Blink is in charge. I would say like she is, out of everybody in the Exiles books, the most normal, seemingly the most like, I don't know, well adjusted. She's a good leader. Her powers aren't that complicated, like their powers we're pretty familiar with. Her archetype, like her character, is not that different from her 616 character. Like I guess like for instance, when you throw Captain Marvel into this team, she's a bad guy. And that is a very different version. And by Captain Marvel, I mean, you know, Carol Danvers, but that's a very different version of the character than we get in the 616 universe. Like, wow, that's interesting. What's she going to be like? With Blink, it's like, we don't really know what 616 Blink's deal was. And, you know, this might as well be it. She seems more confident. She spent more time using her powers, but besides that, this might as well be the main Blink. So for that reason, I do think like Blink's personality here, she gets kind of the same personality as a lot of the leaders in these books. And I think, I guess Blink kind of suffers there, where she is not the most interesting character in this book because she is the leader. She has to be steady, she has to have a plan, she has to make sacrifices. Now, she is a good character and she makes the books really work. I think one of the things that's most fun about Blink is she will do whatever with her powers. And this is like one of the first teleporters I remember reading about, where I'm like, oh, they're doing all the stuff. Like they've thought about this for more than 10 minutes. For instance, Blink beats a character that's having a really hard time to fight with by just teleporting whatever they're throwing at them back at them, and it knocks them out. So like, that's pretty cool. And I would say Blink, Nocturne, and Morph, and maybe Mimic, that's your core team. Those are the main Exiles. The rest is this revolving door of different characters that either go bad or die. But I would say Blink, more than the other two, is associated exclusively with these books. So much so that she showed up in the 2010 relaunch and the 2019 relaunch of the Exiles. And she's, I believe, the only character that did that. Morph shows up in the 2010 one, but not in the same capacity. And as far as powers go, she's a very powerful teleporter. She can teleport people, things. Like it doesn't need to be someone she's touching. She can throw a teleportation like javelin at you, which makes you teleport. She can teleport people to the moon, famously, so like that's pretty handy considering Nightcrawler has like a 2-mile radius. She's just a very good teleporter. She also is probably related to Apocalypse. It doesn't really matter or make much of a difference, but we do know about like Apocalypse has a cult that follows him, made up of some of his descendants, and one of them looks exactly like Blink and has teleporting powers. So like that's her grandfather or something, and then that means she has some Apocalypse blood. But also like Apocalypse was a mutant who lived thousands and thousands of years ago. So like statistically, it's not that unusual, I think. But this is something technically that's kind of interesting about. Blink also shows up in X-Men Days of Future Past, played by Fan Bingbing, in a role that's basically a cameo, although she has some great action sequences. And Blink apparently plays a pretty big role on the show The Gifted, which is played by Jamie Chung. I have not watched that show, so I don't know if it's a good representation of her character. First reading recommendations, I mean, read Exiles 1, read the first so it's 100 issues is the original run, but it's very good. It's very fun. It treats you like you don't know who any of these guys are. Like knowing who they are, like knowing what the deal was with Age of Apocalypse and stuff is fun. But when I read it, I had not read Age of Apocalypse. And I took all this at face value when the character's like, hi, I'm Blink, I'm from this place. And you go, okay, I guess so. And you meet so many characters, by like 5 issues, you go, well, I guess there's no way I'm supposed to know who all of these people are. Like they show a new guy shows up and you're like, I guess that's who you are. I don't know. You've probably never been in a comic before, so we're gonna go with it. But it's a really fun series. It's got the vibe of kind of like Loki, but if Loki actually focused on the dimension hopping stuff and less on the like Kang intrigue. And I think I think The Exiles is a really good book. The second volume of The Exiles from 2010, also fun, 6 issues, so it's really short, and it plays with Blink being on The Exiles before in a way that's kind of interesting, but I don't think it's as good as the original run. And there's a 2019 version, which is okay. I do think part of what was fun about Exiles when it was originally launched, like when that team started, was that it didn't feel like a lot of other books at the time. This wasn't something that like every team was doing. You would have characters like Fantastic Four or teams like Excalibur who would go to other dimensions and do stuff, but like the idea that there was a team and this was all they did was just go and fix universe stuff, I don't know, it felt kind of new, and like just by giving you a very basic explanation of that premise, like yeah, you can already hear it's kind of like Legends of Tomorrow, it's kind of like Loki, obviously it's kind of like Doctor Who, and they reference that in the books. But yes, if you're looking for somewhere to start with Blink, Exiles 1 from 2001, written by Judd Winnick with art by Mike McCone, Mark McKenna, Jung Choi, and Paul Chitrone. And just go with it. Keep a Wikipedia tab open if you want to, if you feel like you need an explanation of how some character works, but just expect that you're not going to know all their names, and that's fine. In Marvel Snap, Blink is a 5 cost, 7 power. I believe they just did a little data mine to show a patch. As I'm recording this, it says 5.6 on Snapzone, but I believe it's going to be 5.7. With the on reveal ability, swap the last card you played with a higher cost card from your deck. So it's a teleporter like Lockjaw, who can teleport cards to the deck, but it's a very specific kind of teleporter. That's why it's 5 cost. And like it's a 5 cost, so you're playing it late, which means you've probably gone through quite a few of the cards in your deck, which means like if you've got a big important card hanging out in the bottom of your deck, Blink's going to be able to get it for you pretty consistently. Like, I think she's going to work really well with Tribunal and some of these other lists where you need like a couple of specific 6 cost cards. And that way it's like, well, if you haven't gotten them by the end of the game, you can blink and get the one you need. As far as characters she works well with, we'll get to the other Exiles. I mean, I don't think she works particularly well with Morph. I don't think she works particularly well with Sabretooth, which is a bummer. I don't think she works particularly well with Nocturne, although we'll talk about her later. Like, again, I think she's going to work well with really big ticket characters. I don't even think she works really well with Apocalypse, honestly. Even though he's like a 6 cost card and he's someone she knows, kind of. I mean, she's from the Age of Apocalypse timeline, but also she's related to him. But you don't want an Apocalypse in your deck. You want Apocalypse in your hand so you can discard him a bunch of times, so that doesn't really work. She originally did save Generation X, and she does, I wouldn't say she works well with Jubilee, but she's very similar to Jubilee. I wouldn't say, I mean, she kind of functions the same way Iron Lad functions, where I do think she'll be helpful in decks where you're trying to pull out like a couple of really strong cards. So she'll synergize probably pretty well with Iron Man, you know, Living Tribunal, Onslaught. None of the characters from the comics that I think she has a really strong relationship with. And obviously we don't have a Mimic card yet, and that's about it. So I think as a card, as like an explanation of her card ability, I think it's okay. I wish there was a little bit more synergy, but maybe that's part of the fun of the Exiles, is that they don't really have synergy. You know, like Morph and Nocturne and Mimic and Blink don't really work that well together, but they are able to come together and figure it out, as opposed to a team that has way more synergy and works well from the start. I'd like to try to play like an Exiles only deck, because you could do that, right? You could definitely take like Magic, Blink, Morph, Nocturne eventually, Sage, Sasquatch eventually. Who's the other one? Namora, Captain Marvel. You do Magneto if you want to stand in for Magnus, but like there's a bunch of Exiles. Kamala Khan eventually becomes an Exile. I think there's a Wolverine that becomes an Exile. Like you could do a deck of only Exiles. That'd be kind of fun. See which ones work well. But yeah, from what I can remember, not too many of them are high cost cards. So switching out with a high cost card, it's like the value isn't really there. I will also say, I like the art. Again, this is part of why I think her card is very clearly referencing the Exiles version. Is the version from the regular like comic just doesn't look like this. I do think she has quite a couple of fun variants. I really like the Jorge Molina variant. Flaviano variant is cool. Not sure what's going on with the Jasmine That's kind of interesting. David Nakayama, though, I love David Nakayama. This must have been a cover from the new series, because there you got the little Wolverine that was part of her team. And then you have that Alberto Del Lago, which is gorgeous. But yeah, I think that's one of the things she's got going for her that's really good. It just looks really cool. That color scheme, power, very dynamic. It's good to have her on a team. So yeah, that's Blink. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, share it with people. And I will make more of them. Oh yeah, also I didn't end up making one about Val because I was super busy and I didn't think she would be super important. So I think what we're gonna do is just skip it and just go like, I don't know, she's Hydra, she's a good guy, so she brings you a card, but then she's Hydra, so she makes the card a little bit less good. And I think that's like the deal with her. I mean, she's really Val Cooper from the X-Men show. If you watch the X-Men show, that's what the version from the show and like the movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that's that Val. But the one in the comics is Nick Fury's girlfriend from Spy Stuff, who's a Italian like socialite who turns out to secretly have been working for Leviathan, the evil Russian Hydra thing, and that's the end of her story. Now she's a robot or something. But anyway, that's Blink. We'll talk about Nocturne very soon. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you around.